Hi, everyone. It's been a while, but welcome to this latest edition of the Michigan State Spartans Insider Podcast. I'm your beat reporter for Michigan State Spartans on SI, Aidan Champion. I'm just doing a little follow up here of uh, Coach Tom Izzo's press conference today. Met with the media for the first time since the Spartans had lost to Auburn in the Elite Eight. A tough 6 point loss in which Michigan State had fallen in a big hole in that first half and was never quite able to come back from it as they had um, in the games leading up to that one throughout the tournament. But nonetheless, they fought hard, and um, that was their, lasting display. Was fight, competitiveness, just as they had shown all year, and what was really the identity of this team. But ultimately, it wasn't enough for the number one overall seed. But here we are. It's been more than 2 weeks now, and this isn't the same team. Um, I know fans are upset by some of the things that have gone down. Um, some rightfully so, and um, you know, I, I I get a lot of it. I do, but at some point it's time to move on. And also, right now, you kind of got to embrace what's going on, unfortunately, with college sports. Yes, of course, you can argue, you can try to make a change in whatever way you can, as you know, Izzo is always encouraging, but I don't know how much of an impact that can have. So when we look at this past few weeks, there was that I guess kind of a doomsday, right, for Michigan State basketball where they lost three transfers. It was that Tuesday. Um, Trey Holloman being that was the biggest topic of discussion, of course. Garrett Norman, tough one there, a guy who could have been a real contributor next season, and then Xavier Booker, one that wasn't as surprising, considering kind of the fall off his career at Michigan State had taken. But I guess I'll start with him. Izzo talked about him a little bit today, and really took responsibility for what happened with Book. He said, "I failed Book," um, and that's tough when you have to admit that or feel you need to admit that. Um, but you know, Izzo's track record of developing players and producing such great talent, I don't think he should place too much blame on himself. I mean, what happened with Book, as much as I hate to say it, a lot of it was on Book, and I hated to see it. I did because I liked Booker a lot. Went into this season as with high expectations, some projecting him to be a first round pick. Um, and he had a very promising end to his freshman year. Looked like he was gonna be the Spartans guy this year. Just one of those, you know, talents that you want more than anything nowadays in college basketball is a big man who can do it all, stretch the floor, can shoot, and Booker has the potential to do all that. Um, just didn't quite wasn't ever able to quite make it over that wall. And he had moments. Certainly, Oakland was a great game for him, but when the mistakes started piling up, Izzo didn't have a choice but to not play Book. Um, and this all goes back to even before that Oakland game. Booker started the season. I think it was the first three games, two or three, um, and then was benched. And he embraced it. He took it like a champ. Um, but then by the end of the year, he wasn't even playing. Um, and that was tough. That was tough to watch. Um, if you had followed his career with Michigan State, if you had known what the expectations were for him going into the year, going into college, even. I mean, five-star recruit, was the number one player in Indiana. Um, just was major. How it all happened was a major letdown. I'm not saying Book himself is a letdown. I don't want to say that about anyone, um, but we saw it, and we know, frankly, what the story is there. So now he's at UCLA and probably will have a bigger role there. They just, lost their 7-footer Mara to Michigan. So, my guess is that they wouldn't have wanted him if they didn't see a big role for him next season. So it sounds like, he's where he'll fit in best. And, I do wish best of luck to him. Garrett Dormand, that's a tough one. I mean, Izzo said today that he had wanted Garrett to play this year. I don't know what those minutes would have looked like, but it sounds like he would have been a pretty solid contributor off the bench. And, and then he had his injury, and then um, that I think that really kind of turned things around in terms of the trajectory of his career at Michigan State. Um, that was tough, especially after they had to redshirt him last year. Just never really, they never really were able to get him going, and but not certainly not really to his fault, but the injuries. And so the thing about him, Izzo said he felt like Garrett was homesick from the beginning. Um, and that when that's the case, money, playing time, whatever, that all kind of goes out the window um, when home matters that much to you, and you can't fault him for that. So that was his thing, and then the biggest one of all, of course, Trey Hallman. Fans were very upset with Trey leaving. Um, there were rumors about money. There have been rumors about playing time or a bigger role. We still don't really know. And we don't need to know. Um, there was, th there's a lot there that we don't necessarily need to get into. But as we know, fans were upset because Trey had just been kind of, you know, he had been a soldier for this team. He was the hero on that Sunday, that regular season finale, when he, stood his ground on the logo and shoved the Michigan freshman off to defend uh, to defend the program, to defend the seniors, and then after all that, he had decided to leave, and then the flame was um, fueled even more when he ultimately chose NC State. because many wonder how that's any better of a situation. Um, but again, we don't know the full details. Izzo wasn't, um, you know, he didn't give any specifics necessarily. The most specific he got today was saying that Trey had wanted to play a certain position. That was one of the things. I don't know if by position that means literal position on the floor. I don't necessarily think so because he's played both point guard and shooting guard, and I think it's more so of the role he would have. Um, that's just my interpretation, but I don't know. Um, no one on the outside really knows. Izzo also made it clear that there's displeasure with how many people within the fan base reacted to Trey's decision. Obviously, a lot of people took to Twitter, um, or now called X, to essentially bash him. Um, and, I agree, was not the right response. Um, I ultimately he made the decision that he felt was best for him, whatever that may be. And you got to move on. We all make decisions for ourselves that we think are best for us. Um, this is still a kid, and um, I don't maybe somewhere down the line he ends up regretting his decision. If he doesn't, that's okay too. I mean, we don't. I don't want him to have regret. Um, I don't wish that for him. I hope others don't wish that for him either. Um, but I'm with Izzo here. I don't think it's okay how many people responded to this. I'm sure for a lot of people, how they perceived Trey a month ago is not going to be how they perceive him um, going forward or when they look back on his career, but with Michigan State. But um, I do think people should remember the good things. Remember the half court shot against Maryland. Remember his two great games against Michigan and what he added to this rivalry. Um, I would encourage people to try to hang on to the good memory because this was a special team this year, and Trey was a huge part of that. So now they move on. Brought in Caleb Glenn, who's going to be great for them. I'm interested to see how that lineup looks with Carr and if they bring in a guard. Speaking of which, Trey Fort from Samford just had him on a visit. It's looking like that's a strong possibility of them landing him. Don't know as of now what's going to happen with that. If I had to guess, I think it's going to happen. I think a lot of fans think it's going to happen, and they should be excited about it. It's another major scorer there, and that's the shooting guard you need. I mean, there's been questions about is Curtain ready to start next year? Um, I couldn't tell you because we just didn't see enough of him. I can tell you he's a heck of a shooter, and um, but is he ready for that role? I don't know. So, do I think if they didn't get anyone, bring anyone in, and he had to start, do I think he could? Yeah, I think so. A year under his belt, playing, being part of a winning environment, a team that went to the Elite Eight. Um, I think he could be ready for that role. But the question is he, your ideal starter for that position? Don't know. And I think that's why Trey Fort would be huge, adding him, and then going back to Glenn. I don't I don't know if he starts or not. If because I feel like you got to start Carr. He's ready. We saw what he could do when he did start um, this year, but um, in the tournament when he had a heck of a game. But because he's a clear wing, so I guess you could play him at the two, but actually not even. I mean, he's a bigger kind of guy. I would play him at the three or four. He's more like Carr. Um, so I don't know because you would think you probably want to start Cooper, but you could also maybe put Kohler at the five, um, put Carr at the four, put Glenn at the three, and then whoever at two. Fears is going to be your point guard still, and I expect him to take a big leap. That'll be exciting to watch. Got to get the scoring going though. We started to see some of it towards the end of the year. That's something that's got to be more consistent with him next season. So a lot of questions remain, and I think fans should just be excited. A thing Izzo said today was um, that for those fans who think he just ignores the portal, doesn't wants nothing to do with it, doesn't use it, intentionally doesn't use it, he dispelled all that. Said we're talking and we are paying. Um, so he's bought into it, whether he likes it or not. But he's getting with the times, so you know you can stop with that. You can stop with the notion that Tom Izzo won't use the portal, that he's too stubborn, that he won't get with the times because he's doing it. He is adapting, and he's using it um, accordingly, how he feels, how much he feels he needs to. He's not bringing in a huge haul like some other schools. I think we know who we're talking about when I say that, but um, look at last year. He only brought in two transfers, really all he needed. Zapala and Frankie turned out to be great for them. So, you know, um, I think he knows what he's doing. Here's one of the things Izzo was really hammering today was the concept of tampering. And I think, I agreed with him. I would think most fans agree that it's not okay what's happening right now, as far as teams contacting um, these players all year round, and whatever form that may be. Um, Izzo wasn't specific on who was being talked to and whatnot, but he knows it's going on, and it very much you know it had him upset, and rightfully so. I mean, it's ridiculous. He said you know, he said that he laughed when, he was told that the portal had opened because um, it's when there's tampering going on, it's essentially always open. And it's, again, we don't know the specifics, but it seems like this happened to his program, to at least one of his players. Um, and it's, fans should be frustrated by it. You have the windows when you can do this, when you can contact players, um, when you can recruit them, and people aren't following that. Um, and it's ruining what the transfer portal is intended for. It's ruining NIL. Um, and it's not a good look for the sport. I do think there needs to be more investigation into this. The NCAA needs to crack down on this because it can't happen. And I it's really a shame. It really is. So, that of course was one of the things Izzo had mentioned multiple times today that he wants to see gone. With that, I think we did learn a lot. I think this was a good. Izzo gave a good sense of closure to all this. There's more to be done, um, as far as shaping this roster. I do think they will land Fort. I don't, I don't have any sources that have told me they will or anything like that, but um, considering the visit and um, he's coming from Samford, so they played him this past year. He came to the Breslin. He played in front of this environment. I would say that, you know, I would say they're likely to land him, and that would be a big one. So, um, thank you all, as always, for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week. We'll have the last media availability for spring football tomorrow. I will check in with you all about that, give you some takeaways from everything we've heard from coaches and players from spring camp. Only two more practices of that, if you can believe it. Feels like it just started. But um, again, thank you all. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks.